All right. All right. Welcome, everyone. This program is about things that are inevitable, but um, kind of unexpected when they happen, just like the weather has done to us, and why we are on Zoom instead of sitting over at the JCC. So I will now let Molly take over and tell you about what she does and how she does it and why she does it.
Thank you, Norma. Well, hey everyone. Like I said, I so wish I could be there and be able to see your faces right now. But thanks so much for joining. So my name is Molly Locker, and my business is Sunny Care Services. So I just want to say hello. Nice to meet you. I started this business in 2018. I started it because I had experienced two close losses in my life. So on the left is my father. He was a practicing attorney at the time of his passing, and it was a lot for our family to sift through in terms of closing out his not only his life, but his practice and everything that went along with that. And then in 2017, actually, my husband's oldest brother, Matt, passed away. And that was a lot of a closer loss for us because he had been only 42 at the time of his passing, and was in the full flight of his life. He had a young daughter, a wife, and all of the things you think about that you have currently going on in your life. He had student loans, he had an office, he was currently working. He had so many things that we needed to figure out. And watching my sister-in-law go through that loss was really the impetus for what made me ultimately start this business, because I saw firsthand really how hard it is for someone to lose their person that is so close to them, and work through that grief fog, and also have to do all the things that you need to do after someone's passed. So she was handing me off the things like, can you call Social Security and get my survivor benefits set up? Can you help call his dentist and say he's not coming next week? Can you figure out how we close out his office and clean out his office? I don't want to do any of this. All of these tasks, these big and small things, right, add to the weight of families going through a loss. So in 2018, I left my project management position at Bridgestone to help families going through a loss. And so actually what that's become now is three facets of my business. And I promise I'll move on from this very quickly because you don't care about all of this. But I started off serving in what I call after loss support, helping executors and surviving family members get the things done that need to be taken care of. And then after I had done that for several years, as you can imagine, a lot of people who find themselves in the executor role don't really love it. It's a big burdensome role. There's a lot that you have to do in a very short amount of time. It becomes a second job for some families, and for some folks. So I was asked to serve as executor for families that need help, and who wanted a neutral third party. And I also started being named in documents like wills, so that I could then serve for that family when that person passed. What we're going to talk about today is a lot of what I do in my estate organization service line. So I actually started this service line because I was being named as executor for families that I had never met before. I had no context of their life. I didn't understand what people they were referencing in their documents. I didn't understand how they paid for things. There was so much disconnect between what I needed to know as the executor, and in doing my job ultimately. So I started helping families and those folks that were naming me as executor, and also others, get all of this information together so that I could do my job efficiently, or whoever they've named as their executor could do their job efficiently and effectively and actually know the things they need to know. So, what you're going to learn about today in this presentation is what your family actually needs to know if something were to happen to you. What are some of these questions you should be asking yourself? And these are a lot of the similar questions I ask my clients when we're working together in that estate organization service line. So I kind of take it a step beyond just compiling important information it's really more about auditing and taking a critical eye to this information, because there are some things that you may not think are important for someone to know, but actually are really critical when the time comes. So I want to highlight a lot of that as we go through these different topics. And then at the end of the presentation, which I may not have time to share a lot about, but I have a lot of information I can send as follow-up of just how and where do you start to aggregate this information? How do you organize it? What does that look like? What are the systems and services that you have at your discretion? Before I get going, it's so important I say this, that I am not an attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving any legal advice or any financial advice, nor would you want me to, Lord. That would be concerning, we'll say. But this is truly just coming from my own knowledge of serving as executor for families, helping executors. I've been doing this now for long enough to see what are the questions we should be asking, but I always recommend that you reach out to an estate attorney or a financial advisor to follow up on some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. So I want to say that there is a landscape that we need to kind of paint here as to what everything looks like today. Because what I have found is that if you haven't done a lot of this work or just starting to think about getting this work together, I want to illuminate just how things kind of work traditionally today and why I think that there are some issues there. So what you may have come to the table today, having already put together, which is fantastic, I don't want to diminish that at all, is you may have reached out to an estate attorney already. You may already have your wills, your estate documents, your trust, powers of attorney already put together. Amazing. You may even have like a folder or a safe or a file cabinet that's full of your important documents, and that is wonderful as well. You may have a financial advisor on deck. That is hugely helpful when it comes to when you ultimately pass, just getting things together and having someone who has that purview over your financial investments is so helpful. And you may also have life insurance in place. You may have thought through your beneficiaries and what that needs to look like. All of these things are fantastic. Typically, when clients come to me, this is the most of what they have together. And a lot of times they have none of this together, or maybe one of these items together. And that is totally okay, because starting somewhere is so helpful. But when clients come to me and they have this information together, or even sometimes when I'm talking about this work of what you need to get organized, people will look at me and say, well, I've already gotten my estate planning documents together, or I already work with a financial advisor, or I've already got my important documents together. I say, that's great. That is so helpful. But actually, when I am serving as executor, I can tell you this is actually the information an executor needs to know. So yes, while all of that previous information is so important and so helpful, it is truly the tip of the iceberg as to what an executor or a trustee or a surviving family member actually needs to know about your life and how you run things in order to start to close out your life. And so that is what I really work with my families on, is just all of the other stuff that becomes so important as I am working with families and figuring out how do we close out this person's life. So just to highlight a few things, and I'll start to go into this in more detail, but things that are not typically listed out there are things like, who are your trusted partners? So who are your accountants? Who is your financial advisor? You may be a financial advisor and a estate attorney on this call, which is amazing. But for the other people out there, it's not really in a central place. Accountants especially. I have served on so many executor cases where we don't know who actually filed the past tax returns. And those are so helpful to see. But we don't have any way of figuring that out. We don't have access to their email. We don't have access to their phone. We don't have access to any past records. So that kind of information is hugely important. What that person would have wanted, burial or cremation, and just general contacts for past managers. So And for children, doctors, things like that. But for past managers, it is so helpful because when we don't know a lot about that person's life in terms of where did they have 401ks or did they have any benefits that the family would be eligible for now, contacting their manager or someone at their previous employers is the way that we start to track that down. And so that is really helpful to see, including, of course, your current manager and who that person is that needs to be notified if something were to happen to you. Financial accounts and just general information here is not typically listed in your estate planning documents, right? So your bank accounts, your credit cards, investments, pensions, where actually is your life insurance? It's so odd to me that we don't dump all of that information, considering like these are your assets, right? These are the important things that make up a lot of your estate, right? And we have them listed almost nowhere. And so life insurance, especially, that's a very tricky one to track down. I mean, maybe you can catch that policy being paid in a bank account, but that's listed typically nowhere central for people to find how things are paid, where those deeds, those titles are, how you pay your utilities and who are your utilities with. I say this in a lot of my presentations, but when I take over as executor for families, and especially for folks that I've not met before, and I am just being named by the court or by the family, I am so quickly having to figure out how, especially when we have a house in play for this estate, how are the utilities paid? How did this person pay the mortgage? Who is the insurance with? I need to figure that out within a few weeks' time. And so I am quickly having to dig through documents, try and track this information down so that I can keep everything current while I'm figuring out what we're doing with this home. And so, of course, you have to keep the mortgage current. You have to keep your utilities current. And finding that out if it's not listed somewhere is tricky. Significant items in your home, of course, and just why you care about the things that you have. And then where do you store those important documents? So where can we actually find the treasure trove of things? I just served as executive for a client where we had gone through the house many times, and actually most of the important documents were in an attic crawl space that we had not even noticed in prior walking through the home. But the clean out company had actually discovered it and found all of these very important documents in this very specific crawl space that we wouldn't have found otherwise. And so telling somebody that you know, that you trust, where you keep your important documents is hugely helpful. So we're about to get into all of that information and how you organize it, what parts of that information are actually relevant to your executor or surviving family and why. So of course we'll start off with the what I call like the bare minimum. This is the starting point for every one of my clients. If they come to me and are doing estate organization work and they have not gotten their estate planning documents together, that is our first stop. So what I do is I help my clients truly kind of match make with estate planning attorneys that they like. I think that that is should be a very easy and personal relationship you should have with your estate planning attorney. And so I really enjoy helping my clients find someone that's a good fit for them, not only just personality wise, but budget wise, location, if that attorney can also help the family with probate if that's needed later on down the road. So I'm helping make sure my clients get set up there and making sure that these documents get taken care of. And then in addition to that, of course, we need to start to store the information around, okay, where is the original? Is it with the attorney? Some attorneys keep the originals for their clients, or did you put it in a safe deposit box? Did you put it in a home safe? Is it nowhere? We don't know where it is. We need to find out where that original document lives. Who is the attorney that drafted it? So if I'm not helping you with that, then who is the name of that attorney, especially if the family has questions about what did we mean by this or what do we need to do next? And then contact information for that executor. That may sound simple, but especially when it's when you're considering maybe this person named someone that they don't really know, like potentially my business, or even just a distant family or friend that may not be in the circle, but someone that they knew would do a good job at this. And maybe they're a little bit more of an ambiguous person. So having that contact information listed is important because we need that person on deck. We need them to help us with closing out this estate and closing out this person's life. So that is the bare minimum, right? We have to get our estate planning documents in place. And if you don't have those together, there's no shame in that, but there is also no time like the present. And so if you would like any help finding an estate planning attorney that would work with you, I would love to help you navigate that because it is such a critical and important step. But beyond that, as I've already highlighted, there are some critical things that I believe are not listed in those estate planning documents that really someone like an executor or surviving family needs to know. So what is all of this information that's not included, and why do I think you need to list it? So I've already said why we need to know who your estate planning attorney is. But we also need to know who your financial advisor is, because obviously this person would be overseeing investments over your life. That is very important. Sometimes I have clients who actually have multiple financial advisors at play, or they have none. And so we need to know the full gamut there. The accountant and tax preparer, I've said how important that is, especially when I'm either serving as executor or I'm helping that executor get that job done. If we don't know a lot about this person who passed, or maybe it's even like a child, an adult child who wasn't brought into financial conversations with their parents, being able to see past tax returns is very helpful of seeing a quick overview of what was coming in. What are those assets? Where were funds being brought in? And that being our starting point for that. So an accountant is the most important. I actually served as executor for an individual where we did not know anything about this individual. Documents were gone, house was cleaned out. And we also didn't know that accountant for about a year into me serving as executor. And when I was finally able to track that person down, it was like opening up a treasure trove, because we were able to finally see all the things and know what was in this person's life. So can't stress that enough. Managers and work contacts, I've already discussed that. Doctors, are helpful, of course. I think mainly after, of course, in a medical emergency, having doctor information is helpful. After, this person is passed, I think doctors are more helpful to know where medical records live. And then also canceling future appointments is important, just to make sure you're not getting charged for, that person missing an appointment or whatever that may be. Doctors seem to really, really helpful for that. And then adult children and their contact information, again, if somebody needs to get in contact with those individuals, if they're not already in the fold. Okay, so financial information. This is, again, as I've said, where most of the assets live. And so I have listed out here the categories of what I typically walk my clients through, what we're listing out, and what we need to know about it. So credit cards is something that is helpful to know. And when I'm doing estate organization with my clients, something that I really need to highlight with them, and we double and triple check this, is whose name is actually on that credit card. And you all may know this and be nodding your head about it, or this may be brand new information to you, but there is a difference between an account holder and an account user. And that account holder is a person who is fully autonomous on that credit card. They can use that credit card independently, and that is their credit line. An account user is someone who has a credit card with their name on it, presumably from, the same company. And it may look like they're an account holder, but on the back end, they're only listed as a user, which means they only hold a card in that account, but they don't have any autonomy, any independence on that credit card. Why that's important, especially when it comes to married couples, is because when the person who's actually the account holder passes, if that other spouse is the account user, that account user has no access to that credit line after that person's passed. Credit cards in an account holder's name are frozen when the account holder passes. And so then what I see a lot of times when I'm working with families on the flip side and they've lost their spouse and they were just an account user is they all of a sudden have no access to a credit line. I'm working through this right now with a woman, and she is quite honestly very stressed about it because she relied on not only accruing points, but having another form of payment other than just her debit card. So she's having to go through the process right now of applying for a new credit card in the wake of losing her husband. And it's a stressful time that she doesn't need to be doing. And so what I say to my clients when I'm doing estate organization work is I say, it is not for me to recommend that you be a joint account holder. It's not for me to recommend you be an account user. What is important for you to know, and for married couples to know, is that you understand what your setup is, and so that you understand what the ramifications are if something were to happen to that account holder. Because again, I think knowledge is really important of just at least being ready for what that may come when the account holder passes. I also like to list out how that credit card is being used. So are we putting a lot of things on that credit card? Are there a lot of auto payments on it? Because again, that becomes really relevant if something were to happen to that person of, okay, well, if that account holder passes and we've got a lot of our life's auto payments on that, then the surviving spouse who may just be the user on the credit card will have to move all those auto payments over to some other card at some time. So it's again, just information to be ready and be prepared for. Bank accounts is also so important, and we don't have these listed typically in a lot of places. So what we need to know about the credit card, or sorry, the bank accounts rather, that is similar to the credit cards, is we need to know who is actually the account holders on those bank accounts. With married couples, again, I see it time and time again. They assume they're both on it. And they may be, but there are times where we'll catch, oh, well, actually, there is this other account, maybe a random savings account that the one spouse may have started, or a CD or something to that effect that they've started solely on their own. And so we need to know that so that we can list that again, just so that we have knowledge of it. And then what are those bank accounts used for? Are you using that bank account to receive Social Security? Is that how you pay for the mortgage every month? Again, this is just knowledge and helpful for when something happens, then what do we need to move over if we don't have access to those bank accounts after a person passes? 401ks, IRAs, pensions, not easy to find either. Actually, when I was serving as executor for a family, and I know I dot in a lot of these stories, but my intention is to show you how truly real life and possible these things are, because they happen every day in my world. But I was serving as executor for an individual where we did not know if this person had any 401ks or IRAs. We had thought maybe we knew of a Fidelity account. And so I actually called Fidelity and gave the social of the person who had passed. And they said, it looks like that person started a 401k, but actually it looks like they never funded it. So there's no funds in the account. So I considered that a closed case, and then actually received later information about the actual account number for the Fidelity account. I called back and they found this 401k in the individual's name with actually $96,000 in it. So I really am a big proponent of listing out the account number of the 401k, who is the plan administrator, and then who are those beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are a thing that I harp on so much with my clients. They will assume they've listed out their beneficiaries. Of course it names, however their estate planning documents would list out. So maybe a trust, or it names their spouse, and then they know the contingent or the backup beneficiaries. But then when we go and actually get in or call and verify who those beneficiaries are, a lot of times it's different, or they may not have ever set them up, or they're old. It's set up in an older way, so maybe it includes a beneficiary that's no longer living, or reflective of past estate planning documents. So we have to call and make sure we understand exactly how those beneficiaries are listed. And something I'm doing with my clients is, once we learn who those beneficiaries are, I'm kicking that back to the estate attorney and saying, is this listed the way that you intended it to, or is this in line with their estate plan? So those are the kind of things that we're trying to catch. Stocks and business interests. Stocks are get really interesting, and they can be a real bear to deal with after someone's passed, and I deal with them so many times. What's helpful to know about stocks is, what is the location of the investment? So who is the actual investment with? And then who's the transfer agent? And a transfer agent you may not even be aware of currently, or maybe you've seen a statement come through for them, but you haven't really paid attention. The big ones are Computershare, AST, EQ, and they are really the ones that the family, the executor, would work through to close out that stock, to cash that stock out, or to transfer that stock. So it's helpful for that to be listed, so that that makes your executor's life so much easier. Other investments, I always catch these when I'm talking with my clients. I say, okay, do we have any other money stored anywhere else? And inevitably, there's always some kind of random business interest, or there may be, they may do all of their investing with their financial advisor, but they have this one side investment over here. So we really try to pull out every single investment for these individuals, so that those are listed, because again, those are very hard to track down unless they are listed out somewhere. And then loans, of course, just knowing of those loans, who is actually on the loan, and then what lender is it through. Helpful again, just to notify after this person is passed, because it's helpful to know what debts are out there in that individual's name, who could make a claim against the estate if that's relevant, that kind of thing. And just good to know to notify them of that. Okay, and I am moving quickly, so Norma, just give me a shout if I'm not going fast enough here. But so household management. This is also very important. You would be surprised how important all of what I've listed here on this slide is for serving as executor. So again, I've mentioned when I took over recently as executor for a family where we had a house to deal with. Very quickly, I needed to figure out how that person paid that mortgage, like I said. So who was the loan with? How was it paid? Okay, it was being auto drafted from the bank account, but the bank account is now frozen because we notified the bank that that person passed. So now I have to quickly figure out, how are we going to pay this mortgage and keep it current? The insurance provider. So unfortunately for this instance, the individual who passed actually passed away in their home. And so, and it had been several days until this individual was found. So that's actually a biohazard cleanup. And that actually is covered by the individual's homeowner's insurance. So very quickly, I'm having to figure out, who is this person's homeowner's insurance with? So listing out who is actually on that policy, what's the account number, so who's the insurance with, type of coverage, and then how do you pay that? Because again, we also need to keep homeowners insurance current, so that we can make sure that the home is covered until an executor or someone like myself can figure out, are we selling this? Is this being transferred down to another family member? Things of that nature. Utilities are the same way. We have to keep those current. So whose name is on the account? What is the account number, and how is it paid? So I will just pull out this again to say that these are potentially problematic areas, again, for my married couples when I'm doing estate organization with them, because sometimes what will happen is only one individual will be listed on the mortgage. And that will be interesting of navigating. Occasionally, it depends, of course, on a lot of different facets. But I have had clients in past where the spouse who passed away was the only person on the mortgage. And there can be some interesting things that happen there when you notify the mortgage company of the sole individual's passing. So it's really helpful to know that and to know who is on that mortgage. Again, I'm not purporting both need to be on there necessarily, but it's really important to know that. And the same goes for insurance and for utilities. Utilities, you would think, why does it matter that I am also on our NES bill? And I can't tell you actually how much it matters. It really, really does. I have had clients when they've lost their spouse where they will try to ask a question about the payment, report an outage, just have basic questions about their utilities. And if they're not already listed on their utility account for their household, a lot of times they have to start a entirely new account, put down a new deposit. I've actually had Xfinity, I think Norma especially has heard this story several times, but Xfinity will actually make you, if the individual, if was the only person on the account had passed, and the other surviving spouse was not, they'll make you take your box, bring it all the way back to Xfinity, and make you schedule for a new installation. It is crazy making. It is crazy making. So in the instance actually of utilities, I am a big proponent of my married couples getting both names on those utilities because it is such a pain to deal with. And so after the fact, of course, I need to know how those utilities are paid. I need to keep those current. Other service providers, they may seem inconsequential, but who is your cleaner? Who's your lawn care with? Who's your security with? Those are typically only numbers maybe in your phone. And so I like to really always draw that out of my clients when we're doing estate organization, because that's helpful to know just to keep things current, keep things, all running smoothly. And it's nice to know who were already the service providers in this home, just so that we can keep that going. And then care instructions for pets and for dependents. Pets, poor pets, they always get forgotten. And so I like to draw out for my estate org clients, who would you want your pets to go to? Who is their vet? Is there any important care instructions? And some of these pets, they can have really specific care needs. And so writing that out is important. And of course, for if you have dependents, so minor children, I always make the joke of, I bet if you ask my husband, he would not know who our kid's dentist is. I feel certain of that. And so I have listed all this out for him because I think, again, you're trying to take the stress out of whoever is left behind of figuring out all these things. And so listing this out, again, all this stuff seems inconsequential, but it actually becomes super frustrating and really hard to navigate if it's not listed. Okay, I'm watching time, so I'm gonna cruise through these next two really quickly, and then I'm gonna pause for questions. But physical items and properties, so safe deposit boxes, storage units, home safes. These are things that clearly contain important things, important enough that you put them in a secure location. It's important to tell or document or write this out somehow for your executor or for your family of where those things live, who can have access to them. When it comes to safe deposit boxes, I really push my clients hard when we're doing estate org work to say, are you sure you know of a signatory? So they'll say, oh, of course, my spouse or my child is a signatory on this. And I'll say, are you positive? Have you actually tried to go to the bank with that individual and confirm? Because safe deposit boxes can be funky at times in terms of getting access, as they should be. But making sure that you actually know if those people can get access is very important. And telling us what's in it, because again, this will help surviving family understand, is this even worth my time of figuring out if I don't know how to get into it? If I know that safe deposit box only contains jewelry, yes, that's helpful to know and important, but maybe I don't handle it immediately following the loss of a person. So listing all that out. Online presence, where you have email accounts. I've had clients who have had 20 different email accounts, and most of them are burner emails for, if you're going to a store and they need an email. So those are not important. What are your important email accounts? And have you put an inactive account manager for your Gmail or a legacy contact? talk about that here in a second. Where do you keep your photos? Do you do Dropbox? Do you do, iPhotos and put it in the cloud, or do you do Google Photos? Photos are a big, important thing. You've stored your memories there. You should let people know where those live, what you want done with your social media accounts, and if you have, important assets, online assets somewhere. So if you have a lot of cash you've kept in Venmo or PayPal, that is really helpful for your executor to know, because again, they can easily pull that down for you, but they need to know it lives there. Finally, just what you would like done with your body. I know that this is a really personal choice for a lot of folks. And so what I just say is that clarity is such a gift if you can give it to your families, of just knowing what you intend or what you would like said about you, wishes for your services, special, verses that you really like, or songs, whatever that may be. But that is such a gift as people are thinking through this for you. And if you're walking away from this and you're feeling totally overwhelmed, I completely respect that and understand. And please feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. But here are some low-hanging fruit. If you're feeling like, where do I even start? Estate planning attorney is a great first pass. But then in addition to that, an inactive account manager on Google, or legacy contact on your iPhone, if you have an iPhone. These are basically like naming beneficiaries for your Google accounts or for your iCloud accounts. I'll have Norma follow up with some links. I think we can do that, Norma, of how you do that. It's so simple. It takes 2 seconds. And it ensures that people can at least get access to those online assets if something were to happen to you. Doing a credit check of yourself and just knowing if there's a disaster out there waiting for the surviving family, or can you deal with it now? Adding secondary contacts to those utilities and accounts, just so people can at least call, ask questions about a bill and whatnot. Purging some of your things now, giving them to the people you love now, especially those physical things, and just having a conversation. So talking with your family about all of this stuff we've talked about. And what are your plans and why did you devise it that way? Just having those conversations. I'm a huge advocate for transparency, because I think there's not enough of that. And that really leaves surviving family very confused and wondering why you set things up this way. So that is where I think I'll leave you. And I, again, have all these additional resources where you can store this information. Amazing questions to ask if you've already had your estate planning documents done, and other documents to get organized. And here is how you stay in touch. I told you I was going to talk fast. It was going to feel like it was on 2 times, but I did my best. Norma, how did I do? Are we good?
We are. We have about 15 minutes. If you want to stop sharing, we can see everybody's little Hollywood square and see if anyone has any questions. I did not see anything in the chat. So if you have a question for Molly, just unmute yourself and ask it. I'm hearing crickets. Nobody has a question?
I spent so much information out at folks that I recognize that sometimes it's like deer in the headlights. We need to process this. I also neglected to mention, Norma, that I of course put in the online resources for organizing all this information, but I actually have like a little physical pamphlet. I don't know if I think I have sent it out to one of your talks that we've done before.
Yeah.
But I had a bunch of those printed out for this crew. So what I'll do is I'll maybe get those over to the JCC, so that folks who attended tonight, if they'd like to stop by and pick one up, they're there for you. It's just a little pamphlet where you could physically write in some of the things that we talked about today. So
Okay.
I hope that's helpful.
I have one question.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned, of course, that you come into the situation after someone has passed away
Mhm.
and you serve as executor. But what services do you provide to those of us who are in our 70s where no one has passed away, but we'd like to get some help getting ready for some of these things? How do you process those services?
Yeah, so that's my estate organization line. And that is exactly what you're talking about, Marissa. So those are folks that are wanting to get all of their information together and organized prior to anything happening to them. And
Yes.
so in that, we talk through all of that information I just talked through. We get it all organized in a system for you. We can even share it with your family members and talk that through with them if you'd like. But it's a whole service line. And so I'll include some more information about how that works in my follow-up to you all.
Okay, very good, very good.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, do you have any checklists of the lists of items that you were talking about this evening?
Yeah, so like I said, I have a booklet where it prompts you to write in all this information we talked about. And I do have like a general checklist to John that just lists generally what we talked about. So a little bit more high level.
Right. Well, is that something online? I know the booklet you said you'll leave at the office. Is the other checklist something that you could share with Norma to share with the group?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Molly, I just want to say thank you for this work that you do. I know you went through some personal tragedies yourself that kind of brought you to this space, but I just want to tell you thank you. It's such a needed service, and I had to deal with it myself about 8 years ago when my brother passed away rather abruptly, and he did everything online at that point in time, and he had no end of life planning because he was only 36, and it seems like things may have changed a lot since then. But I mean, I found out very quickly that Google, Microsoft, Facebook, they wouldn't help with any of those things. And I couldn't even get access to two-factor authentication because his cell phone was, being held by the police. So, but yeah, it looks like there's more things in place nowadays to kind of cover for that. But I never even, I'm still old-fashioned, send stuff in the mail. Everything he did was digital, and I think that's great that you have all that covered.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not perfect what they have set up now. I mean, the Apple Legacy Contact and Google Inactive Account Manager are definitely a start towards helping folks like yourself that get locked out, that find themselves with no access to anything. I actually am executive for a family right now, and they don't have access to the individual's phone either. They're fully locked out. We're trying to follow the steps with Apple to get it unlocked because they really want those photos. They really want to get into that phone. And unfortunately, it's proving to be a really cumbersome process. And that's because he didn't list anyone out for his legacy contacts. And that is so hard to watch families lose all those memories.
Yeah, that's what really shocked me. I mean, even though I was the executor, they were of zero help whatsoever. The only way I was able to access his entire portfolio was because I found an old Google tablet he wasn't using that allowed me to get into a back door. But if I hadn't had that, I would have lost everything.
Yeah. So you understand, I mean, and that's what I do a lot of times, Jason, when working with families, is most of the times we know nothing. And so then we are truly like excavating this information out. We are investigating, I am following breadcrumbs is what I'm doing until we find things that make sense that we need to, take care of. But yeah.
Well, thank you again. I mean, just you're really, it's a mitzvah. You're really performing a service to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Janet, did you have a question?
Well, actually, I wanted to share some personal experience. Before the actual death situation, it just so happens that I am a durable power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney for several different people now. One, an aging woman with dementia, and the other is my brother who has been diagnosed with a rapid terminal illness. What I want to share with you guys is, if you're not familiar with the legal paperwork for end-of-life directives, even as a durable power of attorney, you still have to jump through hoops. For example, my brother has lost his ability to speak, so I have become his voice and have to make all the calls for him and all the arrangements. But as his durable power of attorney, I still have to have paperwork with every single provider that he uses. For example, Xfinity. I can't turn off his cable without them actually physically having the paperwork, the durable power of attorney paperwork, or him verbally being able to give permission for me to do that. So it's a legal nightmare for his homeowner's insurance. I just had to file my healthcare power of attorney and the durable power of attorney with his insurance company. So I have to do that for every single provider. And once the individual passes, durable power of attorney is no longer effective. It then becomes whoever the executor or executrix is. Unfortunately, I've had to learn all of these things by initiation by fire. So be sure when you're developing all of these life directives that you're aware of the nuances involved, and be sure your durable power of attorney who you've named and who has agreed to this understands that all this paperwork has to be in line during the process, because it was somewhat of an awakening for me to find out in the course of all of this.
So sorry, Janet. You're so right. And not many people do know about that power of attorney, for instance, ending when the person passes. And it is a big shock when they realize they've lost that authority in that individual's life. So I'm so sorry you've had to do all that. And Xfinity, doesn't surprise me in the least. I've said my piece about it. So I'm so sorry.
Well, the other thing is once the individual passes, immediately almost all of those accounts are locked.
Right.
Unless you have been named, for example, on banking accounts as a co-owner of the account while the individual is alive, you don't have access to any of those bank accounts.
Right.
So like you were mentioning with the mortgage, you cannot continue to pay the bills as a durable power of attorney. So it's very important, if at all possible, that person put you on the accounts, like you were saying with the names of the utilities, because it makes your life very difficult trying to deal with all of these things that are necessities.
Yeah, they are.
Right. Thank you, Janet. Yeah, that's a good reminder of the importance of having those conversations with whoever you want to handle your estate and your affairs. Just as a quick reminder, Molly's company is available, and also we have the Professional Advisory Council, the PAC, which has financial advisors, attorneys, pretty much everything you need for estate planning. So, and they can work alongside of what Molly's folks do as well. Before we wrap up, Molly, thank you so much. And if you'll get those things to me, we will see that we distribute the recording and the booklet for everyone who signed up for this event this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you.